Guys, Lilac Spectrum here to do another book month wrap up, and I can't believe another month has gone by that I have to do another one of these, but I had so much fun doing it last month that I'm going to do it again this month. So basically, if you're new to the booktube world or YouTube world, a wrap up is basically just when a YouTuber just takes all the things they've done that month and then compiles it into a video to tell you guys more about the products or books or games or whatever. For booktubers like myself, we do books. We talk about the books we've read that month. Some booktubers might talk about every book they've read that month, and some booktubers might talk about like a couple. Now, this month I didn't read quite as many as I read last month. I think I read like 10 or 11 last month. I read like 6 this month. I've been taking my time trying to read them and enjoy them, and so I have 6 new books for you guys this month. So, welcome! Now, the first book I read this month was called Tilt by Ellen Hopkins. Now, Ellen Hopkins has an interesting style of writing. If you've never read Ellen Hopkins, I suggest you try. Ellen Hopkins writes in a kind of prose poetry kind of writing. It has no like rhyming necessarily, but it can. It doesn't have to. And she kind of just writes with small sentences here and there on the page, and it's not like actual writing. It's just kind of like all over the place sometimes, and it's really interesting because she writes books and they're like that big, and then when you pick it up, somebody's like, oh my gosh, you could read a book that big, you know, in such a little time. And literally it's just prose poetry, so it's not hard to read at all. So if you're trying to get back into reading, maybe Ellen Hopkins is a good place to start. She talks about all kinds of different stuff in her books. But Tilt was about these kids who were kind of like teenagers. Some of them were teenagers, some of them weren't. And how they all kind of connect. And, you know, there are drugs involved, LGBTQ, like, issues involved. And some of the characters, one of the characters gets pregnant. And so there are different, like, teen issues going on in this book, and it's how they all connect, and also their parents are going through stuff, so there's a lot of different stuff going on, and I think it's a good book, but it is kind of triggering because somebody does try to commit suicide, so if you're triggered by that, just be careful. But I thought it was a good book other than that. I love Ellen Hopkins. She's always been a good author in my opinion. So if you want to read something new with a new format, that's a good book to start. The next book I read was The Air by Kiera Cass. I actually still have the book because I finished it yesterday. But I'm not going to talk too much about this book. I'm going to give you like a quick little glimpse into what it's about. And then the next week, join me again and I'll actually review this book for you guys. But The Air is kind of a continuation on of the Selection series by Kiera Cass. Except it's their daughter doing it. It's the first time in Aaliyah's, I guess that's how you say it, that is called the country Aaliyah, and it's basically the first time that a girl has gone through the Selection, and it's the first book of that. I think there's only like 2 or something like that, but I'm interested to read the next one. I enjoyed the first, this one, but I think if you like Princess Diaries or Hunger Games, it's kind of like a mashup of that. Nobody dies like that, but it's kind of like a mashup of those, and I said that in the previous month's video with that one. And if you like the Selection, of course you're going to like that one. So I thought it was a new way she approached the idea of the Selection with a girl instead of a boy. And now she has men in the castle, so that's cool. The third book I read this month was Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell, and I still have that book too. Let me pick it up. This was a cute book. I loved it, guys. It was so good. But it's about this girl who goes off to college, and it's really kind of a big book. She goes off to college, and basically it talks about, like, she likes to write fan fiction, which I could totally relate to her on that. And then it talks about, like, her days in college, and as she formulates relationships with her sister, who's also at the same college, who is also her twin, and then her roommate, and then the guy that a few guys that she kind of thinks she likes, and just different things that go on in college as she starts her first year at college. I'm kind of sad there's no continuation of the series, like it's just one book, but I mean, you know, for its ending it was okay, but I was kind of sad that there's not another one. I would like to know more about her story, like where did she end up going? Did she end up becoming a famous writer? What did she do? But it was a really good book, and I really did love it. I think it's a good book for people who are going to start college or who have really, you know, just started college and, you know, can relate, because it's a lot of the same, like, concepts of starting college and being nervous and all that. So it was a good book. I really did like it. The next book I read was Glimpse by Carol Lynch Williams, excuse me. And this was kind of the same kind of thing as Ellen Hopkins' Tilt, but not Tilt exactly, but her style of writing. It was a lot of prose poetry. It was a big book too, but it had the kind of poetry feel, so it wasn't hard to read. It wasn't just like line after line. It was like kind of like smaller sentences, smaller ideas, just kind of thrown onto the paper. And it's about this girl who finds her sister with a shotgun in her hand pointed at herself, and she's trying to kill herself. So if you're triggered by that, definitely be careful when you read this book. But it doesn't focus on that so much as why she was like that, what's happening, and the main character finds out a lot about her mom that she didn't realize. And I think it felt really real to me, like, you know, coming into the world as a kid, you don't know so much about your family, and then once you get older, you start to learn a lot of stuff about, like, things, and you might be sitting with the grown-ups talking, and they might say something, and you're like, oh, I didn't realize that was a thing, you know. I just never even realized it. So there's a lot of stuff like that going on in this book, and I thought it was interesting. The ending was good, so you should definitely pick it up if you like Ellen Hopkins type stuff. It's very similar. The fifth book I read this month was Teenage Mermaid by Ellen Schreiber. Now, for the longest time I've been wanting to read this book. I think I read those vampire books by Ellen Schreiber. I'll leave the name up here if I remember what the name is. And I started sitting down to read this book, and I just couldn't get into it. I feel like it was geared towards a younger audience, and I couldn't get into it. But it was about this girl. It kind of has like a Little Mermaid kind of feel, who saves this guy and loses her necklace, and she's trying to find it and all that. And I liked it, but I feel like if it was written with more older voices, like characters were a little bit older, I would have liked it more. But if you like mermaids and you like that kind of thing, and, you know, definitely go for it. I couldn't get into it, but you might can. So the sixth book and the final book I've read this month was Every Little Thing in the World by Nina de Gramont. Now, I may be saying these names wrong. If I do, I apologize. This was about a girl who gets pregnant, and her parents are like, oh, you're running with the wrong crowd. Your friend's getting you in trouble. The boy you're with is getting you in trouble. They don't know she's pregnant. They just think she's getting in trouble. She's at a party when she's found, and they're like, oh, we're going to send you off to camp. So they send her off to this canoeing camp, which was interesting. And her friend ends up talking her parents into sending her as well. And they go off to the canoe. Her friend does know she's pregnant. And her friend's like, well, I'll go with you on the canoe trip and we can discuss what you should do. Like, you know, your options. Like abortion, or keeping it, or adopting it out to somebody. And I thought it was a very interesting approach to the teenage pregnancy concept, because the ending and how everything turns out is very interesting. It's unlike any pregnancy story I've ever seen, with YA books especially. So I think if you want another take on teenage pregnancy that is very different from the other books I've ever read, Every Little Thing in the World is a good book to try. It was a really good book. It had a great ending. I enjoyed it, every bit of it, actually. There was never a day that I was like, I don't want to read that. So, yeah. So those are the books I've read this month. I would have to say my favorite book this month was Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell, just because it was such a good book, and I related to the characters, and was very, very sad to see it done. If I hadn't chose that book, I probably would have chose Every Little Thing in the World, just because those are two good books this month. But every month I try to pick one book that I found I liked the most, and that was it. Fangirl. So you should definitely check that book out and see if it's a read for you. Now, so far this year I've read 54 books, so that's really cool. I'm making progress in my Goodreads challenge, and yeah, so that's all I had time for in this video. But if you've read any of these books and liked them, or you have recommendations for me, just leave them all below. And also you can find my social medias all below in the comments, or the description below. And I'll see you next week, same time, same day, to review The Air by Kira Cass. Bye guys!